Hello and welcome to Monster of the Week, the only show on the internet which takes old school D&D monsters and converts them into shiny new monsters for your 5th edition D&D campaigns. And if you're not a DM and you're just here for juicy story tidbits, lore, and plot hooks, well, I've got you covered there also. After last week's episode, I know I promised something much less horrific, and honestly, it'll be pretty nice to have a wholesome creature on the channel for once. So this week, we're going to be taking a look at... What the f*** is that? What? No. Come on, man. Really? Really? Seriously? What the hell is that? What the f*** is that? Why is that here? This week, we'll be taking a look at the Odopi, because apparently things are just always awful. As I said, what you're looking at here is the Odopi, which is an aberration which clocks in at a CR of 14. It first appeared in Dungeons & Dragons 3.5 as part of the Monster Manual 3 supplement that they put out, and this creature is huge. Literally, meaning that it stands 15 feet tall and weighs about 9 tons. This creature is literally a giant sphere of flesh just covered in a sea of arms which all end in yellow claws. At the center of this whole situation, there is a body which is described as being completely featureless aside from the fucking arms everywhere, and it does also have one cavernous mouth which opens up into a cavernous stomach. So cool. Oh, and did I forget to mention, in the palm of each of these many hands is a sickly yellow eyeball, because of course there is. Who, what, how, when, why, and where this creature came from, both from an in-game and out-of-game design perspective, I truly have no earthly idea. But we're here now, so let's jump in hands fucking first, I guess. I don't know, dude. But we're here now, so let's jump in hands first, I guess. As always, there is a 5th edition conversion of this creature made by yours truly, which can be found in the description down below in the form of a Google document. So if you want to use this creature in your game because you think it sounds neat, A, you're a terrible person, B, all the information you need is right there. Today, we're going to go over just exactly what this creature is capable of in combat, what its abilities are, and how you would actually build a combat encounter using this monster. And then, of course, we're going to go over some plot hooks, some story ideas, and just some general inspiration for ways that you might use this many-handed horror at your own D&D table. Also, if you find this at all helpful or entertaining, please leave a like, leave a comment. All that stuff helps tremendously. Now, let's get all hands on deck because it's time for... As you might expect from a CR 14 monster that's literally made of hands, this thing is pretty damn fast. It has a movement speed of 60 feet and a climb speed of 40 feet, so as a 15-foot creature, it is going to be just cruising all over the battlefield. Like a giant sentient tumbleweed of doom, the Odopi is going to be trying to trample everyone around it using its many hands and claws to great effect. Its primary means of attack is actually a claw attack, which causes a massive 5d8 plus 7 damage. But if it uses its claw attack to lash out, it only gets to make one attack as part of that action. That might sound pretty weak, but the Odopi is not that toothless when it comes to dealing damage. Thanks to a trait called Trample, the Odopi actually has an astronomical potential damage output. The way this Trample ability works is that it allows the Odopi to move into another creature's square so long as that creature is large or smaller. Once it does this, the creature in the square it's trampling over has to make an acrobatics check DC 17. If they're able to pass that check, nothing adverse happens to them. However, if they fail, they are knocked prone and they take 5d8 plus 7 damage. So yes, it only gets to make one attack roll, but if it uses its movement to maximum effect, its entire turn is one giant attack roll, baby! It is worth noting, however, that this ability can only affect a creature once per turn, meaning that the Odopi can't just roll over somebody and then roll back over them 100 times on its turn, because that would just be ridiculous.
What the hell was that?
I'm not hurt. It's a miracle.
I think you're still on top of it. Back up.
Also, when it makes that claw attack using its action the way that most people normally make attacks, it might just seem like a little extra bonus damage on top of its rolling damage that it's already doing, but if that attack hits, it actually grapples the creature as well. And since the Odopi has the same number of hands as an entire kindergarten class, it is able to grapple up to 20 creatures at one time. 20 creatures! And if you are grappled by this thing when it starts rolling over you, you automatically fail the saving throw that would otherwise negate the damage you would take. You know, on account of the hundreds of hands grabbing you. What an uncool thing to have happen to a person. So it should be pretty obvious that the Odopi is a colossal threat at close range. But even when it comes to dealing with targets at a distance, the Odopi still has a few tricks up its hundreds of sleeves. For starters, it has a throw stones attack, which if it uses its multi-attack action, it can throw up to 4 stones in a single round. This is a pretty balanced set of attacks. That means if the party is trying to play keep away from this thing, as they fucking should, it has some recourse and it can do something other than just try to aimlessly grasp up at the creatures flying above it. It's also important to note, because this creature is huge, it's not throwing little pebbles. We're talking boulders the size of basketballs here. Each one of those 4 attacks is going to hit for 1d8 plus 6 damage, which isn't too shabby. Also, it has the ability to teleport. What? What the fuck? Why? That's right, folks, the giant mess of eyes, arms, claws, and sadness basically has the ability to cast Dimension Door. It can teleport anywhere within 500 feet of its current location using its action, disappearing instantly, and of course reappearing in that other spot instantly. What's especially cool about this is because of the way movement and action economy works in 5th edition, it could conceivably teleport on top of some random adventurer and then continue to roll around at the speed of what the fuck to crush and claw and maim everyone else within its vicinity. It's gonna be killing everybody within sight, and on account of all the goddamn eyeballs on all of its goddamn hands, everybody's within sight all the time. But wait, I cast invisibility, the sorcerer says. No, you don't, because it has true sight and it can still see you. You're gonna be crushed and clawed to death and you're gonna fucking like it. Do you need a hand building an encounter for this monster? Don't worry, I've got your back. The Odopi truly does not give a singular shit about anyone or anything in its vicinity at any time. It's basically just a giant Katamari made by Satan, so roll with that. Pun very much intended. The second your players see this giant death ball of hands, eyes, and claws rolling towards them, they're going to have what I like to call a pivotal moment. They will look upon the 15-foot tall, 9-ton ball of arms, eyes, and claws, and they will either laugh at how ridiculous and uncanny this thing is, or they will be terrified by how ridiculous and uncanny this thing is. There is no in-between. If they should dare laugh at the Odopi, teach them the error of their ways. Have it teleport on top of the weakest party member, and then just start rolling around at what it does best, crushing and killing the entire party. And very quickly you will hear those screams of laughter turn into death knells and screams of pain. But I am getting ahead of myself here. Now that we know what the Odopi is capable of, let's take a look at its fascinating history and lore and go over a few potential. These gnarled and twisted creatures are aberrations, so as you would expect, they do not come from the material plane. Their home is a far-off, distant world, and honestly, I feel like most of you probably already figured that out by now. They originate on the plane of Carceri, which is often affectionately referred to as the prison. Not just a prison, but the prison. It is a plane divided up into 6 unique districts, which are all dominated by a whole slew of terrifying, awful extraplanar entities. All of these creatures have one thing in common, however, though, which is that they have been bound to the plane of Carceri because some god or demigod or ultra-powerful being out in the multiverse has deemed them too dangerous to be allowed to run loose. I could honestly go off about this place because it is truly a fascinating part of the D&D multiverse, but we'd be here all day and this video is going to be long enough as it is already, so perhaps another time. All you really need to know is that it's a super prison and you never want to meet anything that lives there. Speaking of things that live there, the Odopi is one of them. Let me just make this extremely clear. The Odopi is from a place that gods use as a cosmic prison. It is the proverbial Alcatraz of the D&D world, and the Odopis are born there. I guess we should be grateful because, I mean, they're already in super prison, so it's like the best place for them to be. However, due to their highly aberrant nature and the fact that there doesn't really seem to be an upper limit on how long their natural lives can go on for, occasionally one or two of them slip through a little planar rift and end up on the material plane. In such an instance, there are many different ways that you could handle this monster. Using an Odopi as a sort of force of nature is a very attractive option to me. One of these things getting loose on the material plane and just rolling around, tearing shit up and destroying everything in its path can make for a pretty interesting set piece. If your players choose to engage with it and try to put a stop to its rampage, that can be a really fun one-off encounter that doesn't necessarily have to derail your entire campaign, or even mean that you have to introduce the Odopi as like a primary part of what's going on in the story. It can just be there and your players can either say, that sucks, or they can say, we have to do something about this. I do like the idea of someone coming to the party and being like, hey, a villager from one of the nearby towns spotted some horror on the horizon and it looks like it's coming closer to us. Maybe you guys want to do something about that, maybe? And then your players get to feel like heroes, or they get to watch the flames of the city rise as they say, fuck that, and choose not to engage. Either way, pretty fun story moment. As far as how these things actually come into being, we don't really have much information about the way that they reproduce, which honestly is probably for the best, but it does leave a bit of a hole in their ecology, which you get to fill. Oh my god. I didn't even write that down. What am I? Don't improv. This is a note for me later. Don't ever improv. Stick to the script. I personally imagine something like this probably tends to lay eggs. I don't know why, but when I look at that, I think, yeah, you probably lay eggs. You probably lay hella eggs. If that's true and you choose to have them reproduce asexually, it means one of these things showing up on a plane other than their prison home is potential for an infestation, which is always pretty compelling. You know, you'd have certain wizards and druids or whoever that want to study these things, and other people screaming, no, we have to destroy them and burn away the nests, and others who are like, hey guys, maybe let's just focus on surviving first and then we can deal with the ramifications both morally and scientifically of what we want to do with these creatures. You could also go the amoeba route and have it be so that once these creatures reach a certain critical mass, they just split off into two separate entities. I kind of like that too, because if one of these things, which happens to be particularly large, is rampaging somewhere, it would be a pretty dynamic and dramatic moment in the middle of a combat for it to split in half and uh-oh, now there are two of them. I also feel like it goes without saying that if you are running an adventure which takes place on the prison plane of Carceri, you're crazy if you don't throw one of these guys at your party at some point. Even if the party doesn't engage in combat with it, just by revealing a creature like this to the party, it sends a very strong message that the things which live here are alien, bizarre, and horrific beyond what you can comprehend. You haven't seen anything in the rest of the multiverse like what is in Carceri. Another really fun detail about the Odopi is that they actually have their own language. Savvy viewers who already took a look at the stat block likely have already noticed it says they speak Odopian. I say speak with heavy air quotes there because their language is actually comprised of a series of gurgling noises and hand claps. If you don't think that's the dopest shit ever, I do not know what to tell you. I imagine watching two of these things communicate would be extremely surreal, alien, and probably a bit unsettling. Man, 5th edition just does not have this kind of monster ecology, so whenever I see these little details peppered in through a lot of these older creature entries, I live for it, man. It's so good. And yet another personality quirk mentioned in the ecology entry for this monster is that they are fiercely independent. However, on occasion, even more powerful entities will try to force an Odopi into servitude, hoping to wield their destructive power for their own ends. Something to note here is that the Odopi has an intelligence score of 6, which means they're pretty simple-minded, but they are definitely sentient. Anyone who's played D&D with a table of murder hobos knows exactly what I'm talking about. Their massive wisdom score, however, of 22 definitely suggests to me that they are more driven by primal emotion and instinct, but they can be communicated with. In the source book, it mentions that they are often forced into servitude through, and I quote, violence or threats of violence. That means the Odopi is at least smart enough to understand the concept of a threat, and it also means that they have a strong self-preservation instinct. Otherwise, they would just fight to the death as soon as a threat presented themselves. To me, that also means they can be reasoned with. Maybe the big bad villain of your campaign is forcing some Odopis to do their dirty work. The party might be able to stop the Odopi threat by just going above them and taking out the true villain, this individual who holds some type of leverage over the Odopi. Also, if they're able to convince the Odopi that they're stronger than the thing threatening it, the Odopi might join their side and help them take down the villain. What happens after the fact, that's up to you. Now, traditionally, Odopis are chaotic evil, as many aberrations tend to be. But if you wanted to throw that alignment in the garbage, you could give them a bit of a more neutral bend. You could make them in their mere existence kind of destructive, like that's just what they're built to do, but they don't necessarily enjoy killing others. It's just as kind of a byproduct of all the chaos that's around them. If anything, I would say that's chaotic neutral. It would still likely be considered evil by, the clerics and paladins among us, but fuck those guys. Maybe on its home plane of Pandemonium or Carceri or wherever it happens to be from in your world, this amount of destruction is just kind of normal. That's just what its prime, regular, basic state is. So perhaps on the material plane, it's merely destroying towns and settlements and targets that it is being forced to destroy. If you choose to go this route, as I kind of touched on earlier, you could have the appearance of a group of Odopi be a very political issue. Some folks might be less inclined to just kill and destroy them if they know that they're sentient and not inherently evil. Treating them as kind of this invasive species which is having a negative effect on the current environment, but not one that is malicious per se, can be a really interesting plot thread for a D&D game. You could make a pretty compelling argument for their destruction, for leaving them be, and also for relocating them back to wherever they're actually supposed to be. And maybe it falls on your party to ultimately find the solution. In any case, these monsters are horrific and disgusting, but I truly love them. I think that they're actually really cool. Anything that evokes the type of visceral reaction that looking at this creature evoked in me the first time I saw it is definitely a monster worth at the very least giving a look to. If you do want to use this monster in your game, of course, if you're playing 3rd edition, it's in the Monster Manual 3. If you are playing 5th edition, I have made a stat block conversion, which you can find linked in the description below, that contains everything you need to successfully run this creature. And for my lovely patrons, you will of course find the 5th edition Monster Manual style stat block linked on the Patreon page, which has the artwork and the stat block and all the lore and everything laid out in that 5th edition fashion, so you can stick that in your DM folder and have it ready. Because at the end of the day, this is one of those monsters that describing it to your players will get you pretty far, but being able to say, hey, art, look at this fucking insane bullshit, is going to get you miles further. But if you do want to support me and support the channel financially, I greatly would appreciate it if you would check out the Patreon. Most importantly though, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're at this point in the video, I mean, you did it. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you guys so much. The community has been growing so much in the past couple months, so I don't know, man, it means a lot. I'm really happy you guys are here and digging what I'm doing. At the end of the day, just, I guess, thanks for watching, and I hope you have an amazing weekend. Until next week, I'll see you then. It's gonna be killing everybody within sight, and guess what, motherfuckers? Everyone's within sight because it has hands on...